My name is Felix, and I'm a real alcoholic. Uh, Page 60. So, what's the first step?
Admitted powerless over alcohol, then my life has become unmanageable.
2,
Came to a plea of a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity.
3.
Made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand it.
Okay, so can you briefly explain what you believe your experience is the first step to be at this point?
Well, powerlessness, right? Powerless over alcohol. Once I take that first drink,
Line,
first
hit,
drug,
pill.
it will start me down a path. If something takes over, to me, that powerlessness goes with steps 1, 2, and 3. Because the second I take that drug, in my experience, then I now come to believe that that drug is going to fix everything. It is now becoming my higher power, and I just immediately make that decision that I'm going to just roll with it. Maybe not immediately. I guess this last time I didn't. A month went by, but once I went back
you
to
make
it
that
again,
decision, or drugs has made that decision for you?
Well, at some point I made the decision long ago, and now it's no longer a decision. Once I put that in there, the decision's already made.
So step 3 says we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Okay, if I'm to claim ownership of any type of a decision, it happens all the way back before I even.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a point in time where I decide not to be living in that third step. I take my will and my life back, and then I start trying to manage my own life, and then I start backing myself into a corner where I'm drowning in fear and hate and self-pity, and I find it necessary, the insanity returns, and I find it necessary to pick the first one up. And then I lose control over what and how much I use. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. So, a big revelation that I had back in Coronado was that I had a higher power all along. It's just my higher power was a concept of nothing mattered. Like, the concept of nothingness was my higher power. And looking at how my life was, it was a direct reflection of that higher power. I was constantly seeking the need to feel nothing. Love opiates, they drown out everything, right? Just that idea that nothing mattered. Well, when nothing matters, chaos in my life ensues. If I don't care about myself, because I don't think anything matters and nobody cares anyway, I can do a lot of dangerous things. And this past relapse, somewhere along the lines, I switched back over to that mentality. But boy, recovery will surely ruin drug use. Tell you what, because my mind was constantly trying to see the light.
Well, to be clear, it's not recovery, because 12-step recovery, okay, these are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. At the end of which, at step 12, it says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result, right?
Yeah.
I spiritually wake up and open my spiritual eyes and I recover my spiritual vision. Hence the last chapter in the book, A Vision for You. 12-step recovery is recovery of my spiritual vision.
Right.
Okay, so it wasn't recovery that brought about that change. It was truth. This is first step material. This is truth.
Okay.
The truth that, wow, once I start, I can't stop, and then drugs are managing my life for me, and I'm falling. How many floors am I going to go by before I hit the fucking ground? Right? That truth, now that you're aware of, you can't unlearn that. So it's like we're watching ourselves do the very thing that we would give anything to not do.
Well,
does that make sense?
Yeah, and interesting. The truth. And I shared with you the thought process when I had the dope on the foil was I have this pain that I can't get rid of, that I've experienced time and time again, and this time it's just not going away. And fear that I'm just, even if I do get rid of it without using, that it's just going to come back. So my insane plan was, I'll just use. I know it'll destroy my life. I don't know how.
So
fully. I don't know.
Does this make sense to you that you were suffering from fear? It was an impending doom.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and that you were using
I welcomed it
to try to block off consciousness or awareness of your intolerable condition, while you watched yourself carry on to the bitter end.
Yeah.
Okay. To use book language to describe that experience.
So 2 months before we ran into each other, I went to a meeting randomly, and one of my friends was there, and after the meeting we were talking, and she asked how I was doing and how much I was using, and I said, well, I started using meth, and that my opiate use had dropped down substantially, and I wasn't trying to. I mean, at the end of the day, it didn't really matter, right? I was still using. I knew that I still wasn't living a spiritual life, but I forget exactly how I had said it, but it was something along the lines, the heroin use has dropped down a very small amount, which is good. I kind of lean into, being distracted. That way I forget to smoke the heroin. And she said, so to be clear, you're using the smallest amount of drugs possible to block yourself off 100% spiritually? It's like, well, yeah, I guess that's one way of looking at it, but it's exactly how to look at it, Once that was said, seed planted. Just couldn't get that out of my mind. That every time I was using, I was just blocking myself off spiritually. But coming back to the powerlessness that goes right with it, I couldn't, even knowing that, I still couldn't stop myself from using. Couldn't. The unmanageability of using, it just goes hand in hand with it. Like, I expected that. I needed that. Using was contingent with it, because I needed the chaos that it would bring so that it would distract me from the pain.
So drugs and alcohol are managing your life for you. So we jump to page 21. It says, what about the real alcoholic or addict? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. But at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. Right? There's an old saying. The man takes a drink, the drink takes a drink, the drink takes the man. Yep. So the middle one, the drink takes a drink, is when alcohol and drugs are managing my life for me. Right? And then the drink takes the man. And this is their description of it. Here's the fellow who's been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. You notice now they don't say lack of control over drinking, they say lack of control, period, right? He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. He is a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He is seldom mildly intoxicated. He was always more or less insanely drunk or high. His disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature but little. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world, yet let him drink for a day and he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. He has a positive genius for getting tight at exactly the wrong moment, particularly when some important decision has been made or engagement kept. He is perfectly sensible and well-balanced concerning everything except liquor or drugs, but in that respect he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. That all makes sense to you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We got a pretty good grip on powerlessness, so why don't we jump to unmanageability? Because well, I'm going to circle around for a little bit before we get into it. Is our description of the alcoholic or the addict, which we just covered half of it, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear three pertinent ideas, and this is what we're working on, your personal adventures before and after, and these three pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. So I have an addiction problem on top of a human problem, and there's absolutely, positively nothing whatsoever that I can do about the addiction issue, right? My mind will always figure out a way to talk me into picking the first one up, or running my life, managing my own life, I'll back myself into a corner where it becomes necessary to pick the first one up. And once I pick the first one up, I'm off to the fucking races, right? So there's absolutely nothing I can do about the addict part. The program itself, which begins on page 58, deals with the human condition, which is why they say rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. It does not say rarely have we seen an alcoholic fail, because if we in fact if I've determined myself to be an addict or an alcoholic of the hopeless variety, and that there's absolutely nothing that I can do about that part of my condition, right? That we're dealing with the human condition when it comes to the program, not the alcoholic or the addict condition.
Right.
Okay, so then these are two separate ideas, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. So that's what we were discussing while you were in jail, was about the unmanageability part of it. And again, so when we go back to page 52, we had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view. And again, they say human problems, not alcoholic problems. So it indicates that we're dealing with a human condition when we're clean and sober, not the alcoholic condition when we're drinking or getting high. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, given this as a lens, that 1, we were having trouble with personal relationships, 2, we couldn't control our emotional natures, 3, we were a prey to misery and depression, 4, we couldn't make a living, 5, we had a feeling of uselessness, 6, we were full of fear, 7, we were unhappy, and 8, we could not seem to be of real help to other people. Okay, given those 8 bedevilments through that lens, can you describe how you can see and describe the experience of your unmanageability when you're clean and sober?
Clean and sober.
Right. So this is what I asked you to focus on when you were in jail, about these things when you were clean and sober that went on before the insanity returned and you picked up some year and a half ago, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And now too. Now you're clean and sober,
right.
And any unmanageability issues that you can identify going on in your life right now.
Well, personal relationships, start there. You know, I find myself in tension with my mother all the time on just plain and simple different beliefs. Her belief on how to run her house, and I quickly forget that it's her house, and that I'm lucky to be staying there, you know, and so I retaliate and try to, assert my domain there. My car situation. Certainly could be doing more to work on it, and yet I'm constantly losing my emotional nature, control of my emotional nature. You know, I get angry and it literally drains the energy out of me. And I know from experience that I can handle these things in a completely different light if I stop fighting it all. I'm constantly trying to fight the situation and the people around me.
What are the other people
that are in my life?
Yeah, personal relationships, and that would include romantic at this point.
At
this point in the step process.
So leading up to or currently, or just both?
Well, and I say that because I think that is germane to what happened when you first relapsed.
That has to do with me thinking that I know what that I should be rewarded with in life, that I need a family, that I need a partner, and that if I do enough good things and work really hard at it, that I should be rewarded with those things. It's certainly the mentality that I've had in the past. I'm also constantly seeking validation. It's something that I'm working on, catching myself still doing, the need to seek validation from others. And definitely the reverse of it, because I'm quickly, I found, like with my mother, because I've noticed that if I'm in a more reserved attitude, or if I'm down or frustrated, she seems to be more kind and loving. And when I'm in a happier mood, she is constantly pointing out the things that I haven't done or need to do, or that she wants done around the house and wants me to do. For instance, and well, these things will seem like small things, but they add up in my mind. They do. So like the other day, she constantly asking me to vacuum my floor, because there's dog hair all over. So I vacuum my floor, and the next time she comes in my room, she's pointing out that there's a little small stain on the carpet, and that the whole carpet just needs cleaned. And she makes a lot of little comments like that, and in my mind, I'm like, well, I just can't do anything right.
She's criticizing and judging.
Yeah.
And you're reacting poorly to that.
I do.
Rather than being grateful and appreciative of the fact that you're being allowed to live there for free.
Right. And these are the things that I'm starting to see that my mind does, that I wasn't catching before. How quickly it goes to, oh, just not enough. I just can't do anything right.
Attitude of gratitude to bucket of fuck it in a New York minute.
Yeah.
And you know the main problem centers in the mind.
I do. So something that I'm practicing is pausing when agitated. And not reacting to those things.
I think prayer might be a more powerful tool.
That's usually what it's, and that's something that I've also noticed is, of course, and you said it, right? When you picked me up from rehab, it's really easy, and I knew based on when I got out of prison that this would happen, and yet made no plan on how to combat it. And that is, when I'm in prison, when I'm in jail, when I'm in rehab, I have all the time in the world to sit down and work on my recovery, sit down and make time for prayer, sit down and work with another alcoholic. That's easy to do, because I have all the time in the world.
See, that's easy to take that out of context, but that entire sentence says, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. So there's prayer. There's prayer in that sentence. Pause is not sufficient. Humbly asking him to remove my shortcomings is the focal point of that statement.
That makes sense.
Because the real reliance is always upon him.
Right. And that's something that I am trying to learn to do throughout the day, is that reliance, because it's not something that I was doing. I don't think it was something I was doing even when we were still working together back on Coronado. I really don't.
That's a very easy life. We don't get put to the task when we're in there.
It seemed like I was. It seemed like, oh yeah, I'm just doing all the right things. But like you just said, it's real easy.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I was playing t-ball, and the ball was just sitting on top of there for me to hit.
So, now in your life, we're having problems in personal relationships. How about setting up a time to meet with somebody or make an appointment, meet, whatever, okay? And you have a hard time holding up to that commitment. Or you're late, you're rescheduling, you're managing things and affecting other people's lives by doing that.
Right.
There's some of that's going on in your life now.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there other problems with personal relationships that you can currently identify?
I want to say that I don't think so. I am taking a different approach than I have before.
We're full of fear. Can you identify with that going on in your life since you've been back free, out of jail, out of rehab?
There's constantly fear.
Constant fear, constant tension and anxiety.
Absolutely.
So can you give me a couple of working examples of what kind of fears you're identifying?
Fear of falling into old behavior. Of what I was talking about, the validation, whether it's from friends, whether it's from women, I suppose from family too, obviously. If I'm constantly thinking, well, I'm just not enough, there must be validation that I'm wanting there.
Fear of rejection.
Absolutely.
Fear of being alone.
Yes.
Further down the list talks about we couldn't make a living. So you have fear of money, fear of job, fear of
lack of money. That's something that's constantly sitting there. Feeling
economic insecurity.
Insecurity. That's one of the biggest ones. So there are two people that are very important in my life, and the situation became very muddy because I was using and got romantic feelings for her, someone that had already had those feelings long before I got myself into the entanglement with the client, right? And so all of a sudden I have these feelings, and I had to recognize, okay, well, if I care about this person who's clean and sober, I would be putting them in harm's way doing anything, getting involved with her. And that was at the point where I put some distance, and then they put distance, her and my other NA friends, they put distance between us. I had the opportunity to see her almost every day. We've been going to meetings, and something that I'm practicing a little different this time is recognizing, one, that I'm not going to wrest satisfaction out of whether she's in my life or not. That's just not going to do. I've already walked down that path 100 times with previous women. I don't know how anything's going to play out. Learning to just sit back, and it's interesting because the situation is not the way that I want it, and yet it's one of the only situations where I seem to be okay with how things are, and let them unfold as they will.
Do you feel like you're a prey to misery and depression these days?
Not really.
It doesn't keep creeping back in?
It tries to. With those thoughts, like the thoughts of I'm not enough. That's always been a prime. That is one of my base prime programmings in my brain. I'm not enough. I'm not doing enough. I need to do more. Go, go, go. And then, when I do this, this, and this, things should be good. And yet, anytime I do those things, there's always more things revealing to me that I'm not enough. I know there was something that we talked about on that I would set a bar, and recognizing that I'm the one setting the bar, because I always used to put it on other people. Well, it's still something that comes up. And when I have the thought, the feeling comes. But I'm recognizing now that I don't have to let that feeling take control of everything that I do. Because in the past, I do. Because what happens is I have the thought, I'm not enough. I'm not doing enough. Misery and depression set in. And then anger sets in. Anger at myself. And then I'll use that anger as some kind of, I believe it was self-righteous indignation or something like that. You know, it becomes my fuel to do more. And then I get resentful. It's a little cycle that I do. And I'm now starting to recognize how often that thought comes into my head.
Which it used to before, but you were not aware that that was a cycle that you were in.
Right.
Because dishonesty is another key feature that we continue to take a look at. So by starting to identify that, you can see how for so many years you've been dishonest to yourself about yourself.
Yeah.
Reveal.
Yeah.
And under that is resentment.
There's
and under that is anger. And under that is dishonest or selfish motives. Selfish motives.
Yeah.
And under that is fear.
Yeah.
So, feeling of uselessness. This is part of what I hear you describing as well. Feeling of uselessness.
Absolutely.
Can't be of real help to other people. Do you think that you could be a lot more helpful to your mother?
I feel that I'm trying to be as helpful as I can, which by saying that, first off, one of the things that I need to do is more of what we're doing right here, right? Working on my spiritual condition. Because if I'm not spiritually fit, I'm fucking useless. I might be somewhat useful, but I'm probably creating as much chaos as I am harmony.
How long you've been clean? 60 days, and you've been out of rehab a couple weeks.
11 days.
Are you being of real help to anyone?
Not currently.
Okay. Unmanageability when we're clean and sober. Sounds pretty unmanageable, right?
Oh, yeah.